time runs out for charges against ex-Iron County Sheriff's lieutenant. 2 men injured in single-car rollover. And your daily weather forecast with highs, lows, and everything you need to know for the days ahead.
You're watching St. George News at 5, brought to you by our studio sponsor, We Win Injury Law.
Good afternoon, I'm Monica McLaughlin. A former Iron County Sheriff's lieutenant accused of abusing and harassing subordinates will not face state prosecution after an independent review found the statute of limitations had expired. According to Iron County Attorney Chad Dotson, prosecutor Scott Burns determined that the legal window to file charges against former Lieutenant Jeff Humphreys had closed by just over a month. The alleged incidents occurred between 2017 and 2021, but were not reported until years later. While the state case is no longer viable, officials say federal prosecution is still on the table under a statute that covers abuse of power by government officials. 2 men in their 20s were injured Saturday morning when their car rolled off Interstate 15 near Cedar City. For more on the crash and the emergency response, here's Jeff Richards.
2 men were injured in a rollover crash on Interstate 15 just south of Cedar City on Saturday morning. Utah Highway Patrol said a black Honda Civic with 2 occupants was heading southbound when the car left the roadway to the right and rolled multiple times. One of the men was taken by ground ambulance to Cedar City Hospital, while the other one was taken by a life flight helicopter to St. George. Both men were wearing their seatbelts, UHP said, adding that the cause of the crash is still under investigation.
Thanks, Jeff. Let's take a look at your daily weather forecast, brought to you by Casablanca Resort and Casino. In St. George, it's sunny and 92 degrees. Tonight's low will dip to 63, with Tuesday bringing cooler conditions and a high of 73 and a low of 54. Over in Mesquite, it's currently 93 degrees under partly sunny skies. Look for a low of 69 tonight with a high of 78 and a low of 59 tomorrow. A wind advisory remains in effect through 11 p.m. with southwest winds up to 35 miles per hour and gusts reaching 55. Cedar City is sitting at 76 right now, with a low of 49 expected overnight. Tuesday's high is 59 degrees, dropping to 37 by nightfall. A high wind warning is also in effect until midnight, with gusts expected to reach 65 miles per hour, making travel difficult and potentially causing power outages. Region 9 track and field athletes turned in dominant performances in Cedar City, with Pine View's girls and Desert Hills boys claiming this year's championship titles. For more, we'll go to Aaron Crane with your local sports update.
Thanks, Monica. This past week in sports, Pineview girls and Desert Hills boys track teams claimed Region 9 titles last week in Cedar City, dominating the 2-day meet at Southern Utah University. The Panther girls ran away with their 3rd straight title, racking up 189.5 points behind standout sprinter Jade Reimer, who broke school records in both the 100 and 200 meters. On the boys' side, Desert Hills tallied 178.5 points with key wins in sprints and relays, including Tanner Bean's first place finish in the 400. With strong showings across the board, Region 9 athletes now turn their focus to next weekend's 4A state championship in Provo. Now back to you, Monica.
Thanks, Aaron. A fossil site once slated for development in St. George will now remain open indefinitely after crews uncovered over 1,000 prehistoric specimens. We'll go to Alicia Lundgren for more on the discovery and what it means for local paleontology.
A fossil site in St. George that was set for closure to facilitate the construction of an electrical substation will now remain open indefinitely, after staff and volunteers from the St. George Dinosaur Discovery site unearthed over 1,000 specimens from the quarry, including those deemed significant by experts. St. George city officials met with paleontologist and museum coordinator Andrew Milner and state paleontologists. These discussions led to the construction site being moved about 400 feet south, preserving the fossil quarry. Milner shared his response with St. George News.
So pretty amazing. The old location will now be an indefinite quarry. We're going to be able to work for quite a long time.
Milner said the site is important because of the period it represents, the late Triassic and early Jurassic, shortly after a mass extinction event.
This extinction took out all kinds of bizarre creatures that lived prior to this extinction. So animals like phytosaurs and aedosaurs. So animals along the crocodile line. And lots of these groups died off. Dinosaurs were on the scene in the late Triassic, but following this extinction, this is when dinosaurs began to diversify and become the dominant animals on the planet.
St. George City spokesperson David Cordero said city officials were also excited about the news.
It's really a win-win. It's that's always the goal when you have these major projects. You want it to be a win-win, not only for the city, but also for residences, businesses, nonprofits that are the key stakeholders.
Because the quarry will remain open, workers can take a break from the excavation until temperatures drop later this year and focus on other work in the meantime.
Thanks, Alicia. The Dixie High School class of 1955 celebrated its 70th reunion last week, continuing a tradition of monthly gatherings that began 2 decades ago. For more on the milestone and memories shared, here's Nick Fiala.
The Dixie High School class of 1955 held its 70th reunion in St. George last week. Despite the day's rain, attendees found shelter for pictures and conversation in their gazebo in the city's sculpture garden outside the Woodward School building on Tabernacle Street.
That was a long time ago.
Organizer Laree Jones said the last thing she expected to deal with was the rain that day.
You can't do an event without knowing that Murphy's Law is going to intervene. You don't know what it's going to be, but you know it's going to intervene. And not in my wildest dreams did I think it would be rain.
Despite the unexpected weather situation, nearly 20 of the former classmates gathered for a picture and a party at Judd's General Store across the street. For this class, the good times have continued long after graduation.
Thank you for watching St. George News at 5. To learn more about our studio sponsor, We Win Injury Law, go to wewininjurylaw.com. I'm Monica McLaughlin with St. George News, your #1 source for local news.
This has been St. George News at 5, brought to you by We Win Injury Law.